You know what's interesting? Most people think retirement failure is this big dramatic moment where everything falls apart overnight. They imagine waking up one day at 65 and suddenly realizing they're broke. But that's not how it happens. Retirement failure is quiet. It's gradual. It's the result of 1,000 tiny decisions that seem harmless in the moment but compound into something devastating over decades. And the scariest part? Most people making these mistakes right now have no idea they're setting themselves up to work until they physically can't anymore. Let's talk about the first slow mistake that ruins retirement plans. And it's one that almost nobody thinks about seriously enough. It's treating lifestyle inflation like it's a natural law of the universe. Here's what happens. Someone gets a raise or a promotion and immediately their spending expands to match their new income. Maybe they upgrade their car lease. Maybe they move to a slightly nicer apartment. Maybe they start eating out 3 times a week instead of once. Each individual choice feels reasonable. After all, they earned more money, so why shouldn't they enjoy it? But here's the thing. Every single dollar that goes toward a permanently higher lifestyle is a dollar that can't compound for 30 or 40 years. And compounding is the only real advantage regular people have when it comes to building wealth. Think about it this way. If someone makes an extra $1,000 a month and immediately commits that entire amount to higher fixed expenses, they've locked themselves into needing that income forever. They haven't actually improved their financial position. They've just created a more expensive version of the exact same situation. Meanwhile, someone else who keeps their lifestyle relatively stable and redirects even half of that raise toward investments is building genuine freedom. The difference between these two approaches over a career isn't small. It's the difference between retiring comfortably and working past 70 because there's no other choice. The second mistake is more psychological, and it's deeply rooted in how humans perceive time. People massively underestimate how long retirement actually is. They think about it like it's a vacation, a few years of relaxation before the inevitable end. But modern retirements can easily last 25 or 30 years. That's longer than most people's entire working career up to their 40s. And those decades require funding. Healthcare costs that rise faster than inflation. Housing that still needs maintenance and property taxes. Basic living expenses that don't disappear just because someone stops collecting a paycheck. When people fail to grasp the sheer duration of retirement, they don't save enough. They think a few $100,000 sounds like a lot of money, and it is for a year or two, but spread across 3 decades with inflation eating away at purchasing power. It evaporates faster than most people can comprehend. Here's where the mistake gets even more problematic. People assume they'll spend less in retirement, and sometimes that's true, but it's not guaranteed. Medical expenses often increase dramatically. Many people want to travel or pursue hobbies they never had time for during their working years. Some end up supporting adult children or grandchildren financially. The idea that retirement is automatically cheaper than working life is a dangerous assumption that leads to undersaving. And undersaving by even 10 or 15% can mean the difference between security and desperation 2 decades down the line. The third slow mistake is procrastination disguised as prudence. This is when people tell themselves they'll start saving seriously next year, or after they pay off their car, or once they get that next promotion. There's always a reason to delay, and every single one of those reasons sounds perfectly logical in isolation. The problem is that time is the most valuable asset in wealth building, and it's the one thing you can never get back. Someone who starts investing consistently at 25, even with modest amounts, will almost certainly end up wealthier than someone who starts at 35 with twice the monthly contribution. The math is just brutal. Those extra 10 years of compounding do more heavy lifting than most people realize. What makes this mistake particularly insidious is that it doesn't feel like a mistake while it's happening. Delaying retirement savings by a year or two doesn't create any immediate pain. There's no penalty notice, no red flag. Life continues exactly as before. But that delay is silently destroying future options. It's creating a situation where someone will have to work longer, save more aggressively later, or accept a significantly lower standard of living in retirement. And by the time the consequences become visible, the damage is already done. You can't go back and give yourself an extra decade of compound growth. The fourth mistake is failing to understand the difference between working hard and working smart with money. There are people who put in 60-hour weeks for decades, earn solid incomes, and still end up with almost nothing to show for it. That's not because they're lazy or incapable. It's because they never learned that earning money and keeping money are completely different skills. Someone can make 6 figures annually and still live paycheck to paycheck if they don't have a coherent plan for where that money goes. Meanwhile, someone earning half as much with a clear system for saving and investing consistently can build substantial wealth over time. This is where a lot of hardworking people get tripped up. They assume that if they just keep grinding, keep climbing the ladder, keep earning more, everything will work out automatically. But income alone doesn't create financial security. What creates security is the gap between what you earn and what you spend, multiplied by time and smart investment choices. People who never widen that gap, who let their expenses rise in lockstep with their income, end up running on a treadmill for 40 years without actually getting anywhere. They work forever not because they didn't work hard enough, but because they never directed that hard work toward building assets that could eventually work for them. The fifth mistake is treating debt like it's a neutral tool that doesn't really matter as long as payments are manageable. This mindset is everywhere. People finance cars for 7 years. They carry credit card balances because the minimum payment fits in the budget. They take out personal loans for vacations or weddings or home improvements. Each individual debt might seem manageable, but collectively, they create a constant drain that prevents wealth accumulation. Every dollar going toward interest is a dollar that can't be invested. Every monthly payment is a commitment that reduces flexibility and makes it harder to handle unexpected expenses without going even deeper into debt. What's particularly damaging is how debt normalizes itself. When everyone around you has car payments and credit card balances, it stops feeling like a problem. It just feels like modern life. But here's the reality. Debt is a claim on your future earnings. It's a promise that you'll keep working to pay off decisions you already made. And when people stack up enough of these promises, they end up in a situation where they literally can't afford to retire because their ongoing obligations exceed what they could reasonably live on from savings and Social Security. They're trapped not by lack of income during their working years, but by decisions that seemed harmless at the time. The sixth slow mistake is ignoring the power of tax-advantaged accounts. This one sounds technical and boring, which is exactly why so many people never engage with it seriously. But the difference between investing inside a tax-advantaged retirement account versus a regular taxable account is enormous over time. We're talking about potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars in additional wealth just from structuring things correctly. When people skip their employer match on a retirement plan, they're literally turning down free money. When they don't use available tax-deferred or tax-free growth options, they're volunteering to give a larger portion of their returns to taxes. The mistake here isn't just about missing out on some technical optimization, it's about failing to use the few advantages that the system actually offers regular people for building wealth. Tax-advantaged accounts exist specifically to encourage long-term saving, and people who don't take full advantage of them are making retirement significantly harder than it needs to be. A couple maxing out retirement accounts for 30 years will end up in a completely different financial position than a couple investing the same amounts in taxable accounts, even if they're choosing identical investments. The tax treatment alone creates a massive divergence over time. The seventh mistake is the most subtle, and it's about attention. Most people spend more time planning a 2-week vacation than they spend planning for a retirement that might last 3 decades. They don't track their net worth. They don't review their investment allocations. They don't run projections to see if they're actually on track. They just contribute to a retirement account occasionally and hope it all works out. This passive approach to something so critical is baffling, but it's incredibly common. And what happens is that people drift for years or even decades without realizing they're drastically undersaving until it's far too late to course correct easily. Financial planning doesn't require being obsessive or spending hours every week staring at spreadsheets. But it does require intentional check-ins. It means knowing roughly how much you'll need based on the lifestyle you want. It means understanding whether your current saving rate will get you there. It means making adjustments when circumstances change. People who treat their retirement planning like background noise that doesn't require active engagement are setting themselves up for an unpleasant surprise when they finally look closely at the numbers in their 50s or 60s. Here's what ties all of these mistakes together. They're all errors of omission rather than commission. Nobody wakes up and decides to ruin their retirement. They just fail to do certain things consistently over a long enough period that the consequences become unavoidable. They don't adjust their lifestyle when their income grows. They don't save early enough or consistently enough. They don't pay attention to debt accumulation. They don't optimize for taxes. They don't actually plan. And each of these small failures compounds quietly in the background until one day they realize they're in their 60s with nowhere near enough saved and no good options left. The really frustrating part is that avoiding these mistakes isn't complicated. It doesn't require special knowledge or insider secrets. It just requires discipline and a willingness to prioritize long-term security over short-term gratification. It means living below your means even when you could afford to spend more. It means starting early even when retirement feels impossibly far away. It means paying off debt aggressively instead of accepting it as permanent. It means taking advantage of tax benefits and actually paying attention to your financial trajectory. None of this is glamorous, and none of it produces immediate visible results, which is exactly why so many people never do it. But the people who do these things consistently, who make small, smart decisions decade after decade, end up in a completely different position. They reach their 50s and 60s with options. They can retire when they want to, rather than when their body gives out. They can handle unexpected expenses without panic. They can help family members if they choose to. They have security and freedom that comes from years of decisions that probably seemed boring or overly cautious to people around them at the time. The choice really is that stark. You either make deliberate decisions now that your future self will thank you for, or you make convenient decisions now that your future self will have to live with. Retirement failure isn't bad luck. It's not a market crash or a single catastrophic mistake. It's the predictable outcome of ignoring basic principles that everyone has access to, but most people never implement seriously. The question isn't whether you know what to do. The question is whether you'll actually do it consistently enough and long enough for it to matter. If this video challenged the way you think about retirement and long-term planning, hit that like button. Drop a comment below and let me know which of these mistakes you've seen play out in real life, or which one you're actively working to avoid. And if you want more content that breaks down the financial decisions that actually matter, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next one. Thanks for watching.